come and tell us what it was they were doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to visit. You know, I come to you first as a follower of Jesus Christ. Yes, I'm a retired judge, and yes, I am running for the United States Congress here in the 17th Congressional District. There are 14 counties comprising the 17th Congressional District, and I live in Rockford, and retired from being a judge last July, and I didn't really know what was next. Certainly wasn't thinking about running for Congress, I can tell you that. And but God just put this burden on me, this calling, and so I sought counsel, talked to my pastor, my wife and I prayed about it, and it was a strong calling, one that I was trying to resist. You know the story of Jonah and Nineveh? I was like Jonah, like, send somebody else to Nineveh, okay? I'm retired. But God wouldn't have it. And so I ultimately, after some prayer time with my wife, answered the call to run for Congress. And of all the things I've done in life, you know, being a judge and a prosecutor and private practice and doing other important things, I've come to realize over time that the only solution is Jesus Christ. We need to have wise leaders. We need to have godly leaders. We need to have the mind of Christ. And as you can probably conclude without me pointing it out, many in government today do not have the mind of Christ. They do not follow biblical principles. And we are reaping the whirlwind as a country as we suffer the consequences for the decisions we are making through our elected officials. And it's important to point out a bit of history. You know, so much of our history has been stolen from us, been rewritten out of the textbooks, and sort of gone down the memory hole, referring to book 1984. And it used to be that patriotism was taught in all the public schools. It used to be the Bible was taught in all the public schools. And this was from the beginning of our country up until like the 1960s. And it was decided that we couldn't teach the Bible and pray in schools anymore. And then shortly after that, there was a bill passed in the United States government, which you all are aware of, whether you know it, you don't think you are, but you are aware of it. It's the tax exempt status for churches, that if churches were to endorse a candidate, then that could threaten their 501c3 tax exempt status. And so I give a tip of my hat to the pastor, because it'd be very easy, you know, and I've heard from others, yeah, we don't mix politics and religion in church. I've heard it. Might have been something you've heard. But the reason why that is because the church has, when it had that gun put to its head, so to speak, can't talk about politics anymore, can't talk about government, can't talk about statesmanship. The church then began withdrawing more and more and more and more until that was sort of a third rail topic, something you couldn't discuss, even among some of your church-going friends, for fear of offense. But our founding fathers gave us a very special kind of government, of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's us, okay? That's us. We are not subjects. When we declared our independence from Britain, we had a king. We threw off that yoke, formed a government of the people, by the people, for the people, which means we have the duty to select for ourselves those who govern us. That's right. We are responsible for our own government. We have the duty to select those who govern us. And it's a non-delegable duty. I know it sounds like lawyer talk now, but that's something you can't have someone else do. You can't leave it to someone else. That's your job. It's a duty. And how can you execute that duty unless you're informed? You have to know about the candidates. You have to know about the issues. You don't have to be an expert, but you can know just enough to know which candidates are those that align themselves with Judeo-Christian values, align themselves with our heritage, our institutions, our founders, and those that are openly against it, openly, militantly, boldly against it, by what they say, the political acts they take, and what they do. And nowadays, you don't have to dig too deeply to figure out who's on which side. It's very evident, very bold, and I was telling Pastor that when I decided to run, one of the things that I considered, I read a book called Letter to the American Church by an author named Eric Metaxas. And in that book, he examines the church in Germany in the 1930s and 40s and their failure to act during the ascendancy of Adolf Hitler. We all should remember who Adolf Hitler is, right? Yeah. I don't know if they're still teaching about that in school or not, but it was, he started out as an insignificant political player in an insignificant political party. And it was after World War I, and Germany was devastated because lost the war, they had to pay reparations, they lost territory. And this guy comes out of nowhere, and he starts preaching a false gospel. Don't believe it if someone says Adolf Hitler was a Christian who's anything but. And so this false gospel consisted of return Germany to its former greatness, recover its territory, become great again, become strong, lead, don't follow. And at the time, horrible inflation in Germany, took a wheelbarrow of Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread. That's how bad things were. And then he offered them, the second prong of his false gospel was to scapegoat the Jews. The Jews are responsible for everything that happened. Everybody likes a scapegoat, right? You want a scapegoat. You want to be told you have a greater destiny. This scapegoat has kept you from having it. And the third part of that message was false, demonic story that Germans were descended from a race called Aryans, and that they were racially superior to everyone else. They needed, as they purified their race, they would be more powerful. Well, the German church knew about this. There was one church, a state church, and there were 18,000 licensed pastors in Germany at that time. And in the beginning, the church thought it was just a rabble rouser, okay? Kind of just let him go on his way and he'll kind of burn himself out. But then he became more and more powerful, more well-spoken, and the church wasn't really sure what to do, because in this mix of 18,000 pastors, there were 3,000 pastors that were adamantly, outspokenly against Hitler and his false gospel. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was one of them. And there were 3,000 licensed pastors in the church that were all on board with his false gospel. They were willing to subordinate the teachings of Christ, willing to compromise in order to incorporate this new false gospel that Hitler was teaching. That leaves 12,000 licensed pastors in the middle who are sitting on their hands, not knowing what to do, not speaking up, although they knew it was wrong. Well, eventually, the group that was all for Hitler gained greater and greater power. They took over the seminaries, they took over the pulpits, they took over the church. And in the end, you see pictures of the German church. It's amazing to see those pictures because the pulpits and the churches are festooned with not only crosses, but swastikas in the church. And the church began to preach that false gospel. What's this got to do here in Illinois, in the 17th Congressional District? Someone might be asking themselves. Everything in the world, because the lesson there is, if we don't So, my challenge is, I go back to the parable of the talents, or the parable of the bags of gold, depending on how your translation renders it. And read a short portion. It talks about the one guy who got the one bag of gold, and he goes and buries it. And the master returns, and the one who got 5 bags is praised because of what he earns, and he gets more. The one who got the 2 bags is praised because of what he did with what the master entrusted to him. And then we come to the guy that got the 1 bag of gold or talent, and he gives it to the master and says, "Here is what belongs to you." The master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant, so you knew that I harvest where I do not sow and gather where I have not scattered. But then you should have put the money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I return, I would at least have received back the interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." I know that parable has many interpretations, but think about it for a minute. All of us have been given a talent. We've all been given something. Our time, our treasure, our talents. All of us have a duty in America to act, to pick our leaders. If we don't, we're like the guy with the 1 talent. And you say, "Gee, well, what can I do on 1 person?" I've read that half the people who go to church every Sunday are not registered to vote. But I say, if it's any of us, shame on us. There's nothing to it. We have information on our table how to register to vote if you haven't. And then, if you register to vote, number 1, you have to learn a little bit about the candidates, whether they're lining up with biblical Judeo-Christian views or if they're against it. Like, are they for transgender therapy? Are they for boys and girls being in the same locker rooms, being in the same sports? What are their values? You have to learn those things because everything's at stake. In my life, I don't want to pass with her with this, but this is the most consequential election of my life. And you've heard people say before, this is the most important election. And it may have been true at the time, but this is the most consequential election because the forces of darkness, the powers of evil are extremely strong, and we are at the crossroads. And I tell people that I like sports, this is sudden death overtime, okay? There's no next season, there's no do-overs. This is it. This is the moment when Christians have to get registered to vote, they have to vote, they have to take their friends, get them registered, get them voting, because that's the minimum we can do with our talents. And if you have abilities or money to help with Christians who are fighting the good fight, obviously that goes without saying, as the Lord leads, you help them too. Because I know I would have to give an account to the Lord if I turned him down when he was calling me to run. I want to get in my Harley Davidson and go west, okay? This was not something I chose to do, but it was something I knew I had to do. The time is short. I had to rise up and do what's right. We can't just sit in a little bubble, a little Christian bubble, or talk to our Christian friends and ignore the storm that's going on outside. Because come November, we will have either rescued our republic by electing God-fearing men and women, or we will have lost it. There's no in 4 years, this or that. This is it. This is for all the marbles. So you are the margin of victory, and I just love the pastor's message about hope, because I've heard so many people talking to them, they have a tone of discouragement, like, oh, well, everything's going to hell in a handbasket in so many words, and there's nothing we can do, just sit around and wait for Jesus to return. That is not biblical, folks. We never sit around. We never passively sit by preached. We can't just say, well, I'm just gonna hunker down here until the Lord returns or something. We are not being the good Samaritan. We are being the foolish guy buried the talent in the ground. We will give an account before the Lord if we fail to act. So, yes, I want you to support me, but more important than that, I want you to realize the times in which we live. They're unlike any other time. Time doesn't repeat itself. It looks similar because we continue to make the same mistakes and we have the same consequences. Look at the Old Testament and the nation of Israel. I mean, they follow God, be blessed. They wouldn't follow God, they'd be punished. They'd repent. God would bless them. You've seen the cycle. This is where we are right now in America. We don't do everything we can. So it's clear, I don't want anyone to say, Joe Mcgraw was talking about, our salvation coming from the government. That is not true. Chuck Colson, this author, once said, when Jesus returns, he's not coming on Air Force One. Okay? The point being that we are stewards of the government entrusted to us. You are stewards of who gets elected. You have to choose. You have to know. You have to vote. You have to act. You have to speak up and tell others. That's what's been entrusted to you. That's the talent that's been entrusted to you, so you can fulfill your duties as citizens. You are the margin of victory. If the church is active and goes out and speaks, there's nothing it won't be able to, nothing we won't be able to accomplish together. So everybody can do something more than nothing. And I just ask you to search your heart and say, Lord, there's some hard words. Joe Mcgraw said, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do in response? Just follow the leading of the Holy Spirit. Something more than nothing with talents entrusted to you. And pray for our leaders. Pray for me. It's a spiritual battle. Pray for those that are, I wrote this down, Pastor. Love this plaque you have in your home. The will of God will never, my writing is terrible. The will of God will never lead us where the grace of God can't be. Yeah, so that's where we are. Thank you for letting me visit with you. We'll be out by the tables after the message.
The tables over here, you may not know where you live in the district line. There's a big map over there and some other materials that you might help understand where he's coming from. Thank you for being with us today. It's an honor to have you, sir. All right, everything's on as we go.
Superior. Where's Superior Divide?
Right here. Right here is the one.
And what street is this?
Yeah, if you got a Peoria address, you're like